Welcome to Bite Size Dental Marketing. Ian, I'm so happy to have you back. It's been a long minute.
It's been a hot minute. It's been a
Your
hot minute.
world travels through Greece and Europe and back into South Africa. Man, I missed you, you know.
Th- Thank you. Thank you. No, it's good to be back. And I know we've been trying to do this for a while. And finally, the stars have aligned. And I mean, today we're talking about something important, Eric. We're talking about something very important that I know our listeners are going to enjoy.
No, it is. And I want to talk about marketing budget and what it is, what it represents, and what it means. Because the last couple of years have been amazing for most dentists. We've seen, great growth in both collections and new patients for the most part.
Especially
Obviously, we've
after
seen,
the COVID, after the gates opened up again and appointments were
yeah,
able to happen again, we saw this massive spike in new patient acceptance. Understandably so, the world was shut down.
mhm, yeah, and we're in this inflationary economy right now. And from the Robert Edwards and his crew and other folks, we know that they're having some declining in profitability. And in my opinion, as a marketer, when I see growth, and then in 23 we got back to a more normalized year, and then we had some inflationary events that lower profitability, it began to put pressure on that marketing budget. And once that pressure came applied, as an agency, we began to field questions around where's my money going and how are we allocating funds. I'm having some slower new patient months, and that was sort of the predicator of today's episode of,
hmm
if I'm a dentist, how do I determine the ROI, or how do I judge my marketing budget, and what do I want in return for it?
No, I think that's a question as old as time from the very first dental practice and marketing agency that worked together is this making sense for my practice? Am I getting out of it what I need to be getting out of it? And is it helping my bottom line at the end of the day? And these questions are so important because it helps you as a dentist also understand, if I'm allocating this much, what am I getting for it in return? And are the services that this company is offering me giving me what I want to do? And that'll differ from whether you're a startup, whether you're an established practice, if you want to build out your brand in a certain way, if you want to grow in social media. Those are all things that you will need to determine personally as a practice in the ROI. But when it comes to our general sentiment, I think the things I go to first, one is, what is my online presence? You as a dentist need to think for yourself. When I look at my website, when I look at my citations, meaning your Google My Business, your Yellow Pages account, your any type of social media, are you represented in a way that you are proud? And if that answer is no, and you are paying a marketing agency, then it's time for a discussion. So that
Mhm.
to me is one of the first pillars of measuring the value that I'm getting for the budget I'm paying.
I would even cascade that down to, if I bought an Atero, I want it on the website. If
Mm,
I started rolling out implants or Invisalign or another procedure, I want service pages. Yeah, to me, it's funny you started there. I do break out the marketing budget in two distinct groups. I think there's the maintenance part. That's exactly what you said. I want my brand represented well. When I Google
mm,
myself, how I look online matters to me. If I'm a dentist, I want my business profile up, looking sharp on Google. I want my reviews responded to. I want my website updated with semi-accurate pictures of me, the team, and the building. They don't need to be, perfectly fresh. And I
hmm
want all the services and treatments out there that I provide. I do want, if a new patient or an existing patient Googles me to see if I do implants, to see if I do all on fours, to see if I have an oral surgeon come in my office, I want my information to be accurate.
hmm
And some portion of the marketing budget goes to that. And
Exactly.
I think
Because
that's where you get into, is
your
it
marketing
1%?
company is your megaphone. To tie into
Mhm.
what you're
Yeah.
saying, that is how you should see it. This is a megaphone. So if I'm a dentist and I'm standing with a megaphone, and think of it, this information and pictures and data is going out into the internet, that marketing company is just that extension of making sure that that communication coming from your side is being
Mhm.
shown to the world. So as Eric is saying now, the first one is definitely a portion of whatever budget you are spending on marketing. You must accept that a part of that is going to making sure your presence online is maintained
Hmm.
and that people see you for who you really are.
Yeah.
Number 2, Eric.
Hit me. Are you asking me?
I'm asking you. I'm
I
asking
think
you.
number 2 would be social media. I want my social media to be current. And I don't need to do the dances, and I don't need to do, it doesn't need to be amazing, but I need some social media presence of when I'm Googled. We are seeing the Facebook and Instagram Google results very high on branded searches.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that also represents my
Is
brand.
maintained. And
Yeah.
and Eric, I like what you're saying, because yes, you have your dentists that are fired up to want to do the dances and the TikTok, and that's great. That pulls also a younger demographic in many cases because they're on those type of platforms. But when it comes to thinking about the value of your marketing, that is a bonus. What you want to do,
Mhm.
as you touched on now, you need to make sure that you stay relevant and up to date. Because think of us, if we move outside of dentistry for a second. Eric, you want to go to a restaurant. You want to take the missus to a nice restaurant. You've heard of good things. You go to their website. You want to check out the food. You drop into their Instagram account. They haven't posted in 8 months. How you feel?
My
How
confidence
does that?
goes down.
It does. It
Hmm.
does. And that's how I want dentists to think about this. It's not about, a very wise man once told me, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. And I live by that more and more every day. Do not go out and say, but this graphic needs to be edited perfect like this, and
Hmm.
it needs to
Hmm.
look
Hmm.
like this. Make sure that you stay up to date and that your agency that you're using is keeping you relevant and that posts are going out regularly. And that, as a dentist, is enough. That is enough.
Agreed.
And it will do what it needs to
On
do.
the social media side. Yeah.
On the
Now,
on the only on the social media.
mhm,
Correct.
right.
Correct.
Now, the third one, which I think is the most important for me, if I were a dentist, I want to be fair. It is around new patient acquisition. I think that if I
Mm.
were spending 4%, 5% of my marketing budget, I want the bulk of it going toward things that drive new patients for me. And that's, I think, where we get hung up sometimes is there are dentists out there that want all the value on new patient acquisition. I think that's fine. I do not agree with it, but I think that if that's your approach, fine. Unfortunately, I do think of it as a pyramid of if I don't have great information about myself, if I don't have a good website that converts, if my website doesn't give confidence to the users, if my social media doesn't support what I'm doing, if my reviews aren't in a line, I think spending money on new patient acquisition is significantly more difficult and less valuable, in fact, and harder to determine ROI. But I do think that the bulk of my budget should be spent on activities that drive new patient growth. And that's where it gets challenging because September, as we see demand go down of people searching for dentists, it's like, well, I'm spending all this money. Where are my new patients? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where, there are so many philosophies around spending money. If I'm a dentist and I'm putting that much money toward marketing and I have a bad month, I do suddenly start having questions as to why. So, it really is such a fascinating question. Are we saying how to determine ROI, or are we saying, I'm going to have bad months even though I'm spending 4 to 5% of my collections? And I think that's where the philosophy of the dentists themselves comes into play of they have to know what their goals are.
Mm-hmm. And
And
I mean, I know we've chatted about this at length before, and I think there's a middle ground there of, yes, I agree that when it comes to measuring the success of marketing, of course, a dentist needs to look at the ROI. It is one, as we said, if we're talking about the pillars here of what to look at. Of course, it's one of the pillars. If I was a
right.
dentist, I would agree. And when we do have the times of downturn, I do like what you touched on there. I think that's where dentists should also remember that when I have downturn, it doesn't mean that any of my other marketing services are just becoming null and void, like
Hmm.
nothing. Just because I'm slow doesn't mean that these other things aren't happening. And we know the market does this. We know it goes ups and down. And as you rightfully mentioned, especially these last months at the end of the year, we have a little bit of a downturn until back in Jan when we kick up again. And to have the outlook of, I want to be ready for when that swing happens again. And that's where you should think when it comes to the allocation of funds for your marketing. Sometimes there's investing and sometimes there's taking. And investing meaning I don't think my online presence right now is where it needs to be for when this next upswing is going to happen, or for when the next social media trend happens, or for something. So what am I doing to prepare myself? And that is a calculation that needs to be considered when you're thinking of what will it do to my ROI in a few months down the line, when I do focus on that KPI by itself.
Yeah, I like what you said. If I put my shoes of, I'm Eric Hubbard, I'm a dentist. Let's say I do $200,000 a month in production. There are times when I don't need Google Ads running in December when I'm going to take 2 weeks off when my schedule's already packed. I want my marketing team focused on building my base for the spring. And the question around even the term ROI, if I were a dentist, I will tell you that I would also personally struggle of how to determine ROI. Is it the cost per call? Well, I would love for my cost per call to be $40, $50 per call, knowing I should convert 50% of them. Okay, well that puts me at a new patient around $100 or so, depending on what I'm doing there. I think some people judge ROI like that. I think some people judge ROI just, I want 50 new patients and 40's failure and 50's amazing. And I think that's okay. I think that's a little myopic and doesn't take into account seasonality. And then I think there's, other ways to calculate it around the new patients that came in drove
number of followers,
25,000. Yeah, number of leads, there's a million.
Traffic to the website, rankings that I have. These are all things, and I love that you're touching on that, because that again ties into the bigger question is, dentists, look at all of these things when you're trying to determine, and ask your marketing agency, how is this happening? How is this happening? How is this doing? Because the success of your practice is not just rankings alone. It's not new patient numbers alone. It's not your social media followers alone. It's a collection of things that come together to say the health of where I am as a dentist online and how I am represented and how it's driving business for me and how my calls are being answered at the front desk, how the imaging of what I look like, how that is going out. All of these things need to give you a good feeling in your heart. You need to be saying, I like what I'm seeing. And when you have that, along with understanding the seasonality of things and knowing that you're working towards something with the money that you're investing, it's also going to give you more sleep, less sleepless nights, rather, if I can put it in that way, rather. So,
yeah.
And I like that you touched on, Eric, specifically on the new patient number question. You can also have a situation of, I have less new patients, but the production, because my marketing team targeted certain services, my production has gone up and my new patient numbers have gone down, but I'm still making more money, or the same amount of money than I did, but I have more free time. So
yeah,
that's
but if I
also
was a
a level
dentist,
of
I would probably attribute that to I'm selling the heck out of some dentistry. I want to bring it back to something that's been on my mind as you're talking. Is I want to talk in real dollars, I think, for a dentist. And again, I really am trying to put myself in the shoes of if I ran a practice. I think somewhere between just to keep my website running, to keep it secure, to keep it updated. That's $400 to $700 probably a month. Going to cost you, right?
and
Review
that,
management.
that would be domain is running and it's secure, and I want
the
this
minimum
update made. Yeah, the minimum.
Got to keep a website running and secure. Yeah,
and update
forms.
this person's name on the about page.
Yeah, I would include forms and new patient forms into there, but $400 to $700 a month is probably just bare bones what it takes to keep keeping the lights on.
Yeah.
I think from there you get into the business profile. I think responding to Google reviews is just a requirement in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is just something to do, and I think that's a function of how many reviews you have. But again, a couple $100 to do it well. Someone in the office could do it, but they're probably not going to consistently. So, again,
it's not their job, and they tend to not be. Yeah.
And then I think you get into honestly just how I feel about my presence, keeping my site updated. And I think that's a wide range.
Mm-hmm.
If I already feel good about my site, I admit it can be very low. But if I'm evolving my team, if I'm adding doctors, if building out
Changing
ops,
design,
if I'm
updating things. Yeah.
right, if I was Eric Hubbard DDS and now I'm adding Dr. Ian to my thing and I want to become, Eonric Dental, I need to rebrand. So I think it depends on what's happening, but I do think that ebbs and flows with sort of also how tight I want my brand to be. And that's, I
Mm-hmm.
think, what gets challenging is, someone else may say, I am shooting for perfection. And I may say, if my brand is represented good enough, I may be happy. And again, I think that can range from a couple hundred up to the thousands, depending on how big of a
How,
shop I
yeah,
am and how
you
much
want to do. Yeah,
what
and
I want to
especially
do.
all the work, especially with rebrandings and things like that.
Uh-huh.
Dentists need to understand how complicated a rebranding is. Not just changing your name. There's a
Right. That's
lot that needs to
cascaded down.
go.
Yeah, cascades down.
Yes,
But
into
I,
many
I would
things.
also put the patient testimonials. So if I finish big cases, I want an interview with them. I want that pushed out on social media. And I know I'm kind of blurring lines, but I think that represents my brand, right? If I finish a big case on the front six, I want it pushed out. I want to highlight my work. While I think that drives new patients, I have to sort of say I think that's in brand building, brand advertising type work. And I think that I would include that in that bucket,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not doing, advertising for new patients. But when they come to me, I want them to see excellence, the demonstration of excellence and social validation. I would put those in there.
In there.
And again, I think that bucket's bigger than most dentists realize, because I would personally want one testimonial per quarter. I would want to make sure that technology was there, things like that. And again, I'm going to say that's a couple $1,000s spent for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're moving into a few thousand. Right? Just
Mhm.
if you're adding up what you've said now, so let's say we're keeping the lights running, the website's up, the security of the website, the domain,
New
making sure if a
patient
hack comes
forms.
in, new patient forms,
Yep.
just the technical things. As you say, we're looking at 400, 700, up to $1,000. Then if you're adding in the social media and those things, you're looking at another couple of $100 in your presence. Then when you look at, as you're saying, the videos and the photos, making sure all of these things, then it starts to
Hmm.
become a web, because it's not just I'll post it on Instagram. It needs to go out Instagram, Facebook, Google My
Yep.
Business, upload it to the website. And that takes man hours. So at that point, I would say you're moving into the thousands range. And then if you're
Easy.
looking at
Easy.
SEO and then paid media, I mean, I think these are probably the last two things that I would think about
Yeah.
if I was budgeting as a dentist. Those first couple of things are very important, but then when making sure that your brand actually gets in there, people are seeing you, that's where SEO and paid media comes in. And I mean, SEO, I've seen stretches for some companies from $2,000 up to $10,000 a month in
Yeah.
terms of the effort. And then paid media, I know is also something that
Yeah. The sky's the limit. But
the
the reason
sky's the limit.
the reason I structured it that way is if I were a dentist, I need those done first, because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, what are you developing SEO for? You're taking them to a website that doesn't represent me to my expectations, or you're driving patients to me without the appropriate understanding of who they are and what they're getting into. And I structured it that way because I feel like that if I didn't have my base layer of who I am, responding to reviews, having a great website, what are we driving new patients for? I mean, I think
Mm-hmm.
I think it can still be effective, but I think you're going to overpay. So then I think we do get into new patients, and I think I would actually not go down the SEO route or the paid media route. I would say, Dr. Hubbard, I want 25 new patients a month. I'm a fee for service dentist, or whatever. I want 25 new patients a month. I think then my marketing budget needs to reflect not only my area, but how strong I am generating referrals. What is my flow already? Am I going from 5 to 25, or am I going from 20 to 25?
Very important.
And
Yeah.
then I think it needs to sort of ebb and flow with my schedule. And,
Mm.
I mean, we know over time that represents somewhere between 4 to 6% of the practice's collection in totality. But I think I do acknowledge that as dentists get slow, they want to diminish the first tranche of activities and put pressure on the last chance. And I think that's okay. I think at some point we're all emotional human beings, but if you have 100 people, and I'm just going to use, if there's a maximum of 100 people searching for a dentist in your area, and there's 5 other dentists, and then September happens and there's only 30 people searching for a dentist, and there's still 5 dentists, you can't. My marketing budget is not going to fix demand, and I think that's where we get into the nuances of conversation of I should have a different plan for September than I do for December, and there
And
are
how I
times
judge success.
and how I judge success, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that you shouldn't, call your marketing team and ask what's going on. I'm saying there are real world factors that are at play, and I would not expect all of my budget to go to new patient acquisition. And if I did, I probably need to go to lead vendors, and there are a ton of them out there. I don't think you want an agency though at that point.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
We've had a lot of conversations about what's included in a marketing budget, and some of it's obviously where I'm coming from as a dentist, where I'm at in my life stage, where my practice is. But summarize it for me.
So there's 3 main pillars at this point to me that you as a dentist should be thinking about when you are trying to determine whether you are getting a bang for your buck when it comes to allocating your marketing spend, and how to determine success and whether it's working for your practice and if it's valuable. So the first one we need to touch on is keeping the lights on. And this is a bit more of the boring stuff that I don't think a lot of dentists or people outside of marketing know about. But
You
without
got to
this
pay the rent.
without the infrastructure, you do not exist. You do not function. So
Mhm.
here we chatted about from the payments for your domain and keeping it registered, to the maintenance of your website, to making sure it's running fast, to
The security of the site is paramount in
exactly
2023.
how the
Things
forms
like that.
how the forms are functioning in the back. If you're using a third-party software that's sending leads through to your Excel sheet that you then follow up on, all of those stuff is what we like to call the housekeeping and keeping the lights on. So part of your marketing budget in your mind as a dentist should be allocated to that. The second one is a very important one, and Eric, this is one we've of course spoken about at length, is who you are as a brand online, and even to the field day that you have in your local town. Your appearance as a brand, who you are, the design, the wording on your website, the type of pictures, staying up to date. I know you had mentioned the social media world, all of those things.
Yeah, I would include social in here. I would include patient testimonials to highlight my recent work. I would include any new technology that I've added to the office. I would include making sure my staff was current and I have good
Reviews are
bios.
coming
I make
in.
sure I have good pictures. When I Googled myself, I want to see a good picture of what I think my brand should be.
And if you're not happy with that, then you need to have a discussion with your marketing agency, because that again is a portion of whatever you are spending on your marketing and your marketing budget. A portion of that is all about appearance and staying relevant and staying up to date with who you
And
are.
I do think that adds to the new patient mix, but the third one is new patient acquisition. I distinguish them differently because one of them, when someone comes to me, a referral source, or someone stumbles on me driving by, I want them to get a good picture because I think it increases the likelihood of converting into a new patient. So I think for me, the reason the second one is so important to do first is I don't think my advertising, or the more classic Google AdWords, more classic SEO, paid campaigns, I don't think they will be as effective. In fact, I know they won't be as effective. I say I don't think, humbly. I don't think they will be as effective if my brand is not represented well on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, you pointed out earlier why it's like running all these ads for an amusement park and it's the best place in the world, and they arrive at the gates and there's nothing there, or it's a broken down ship and nothing is actually happening. Pouring money into promoting something that's not up to scratch with what truly represents your practice is a waste of money, in my
It
opinion.
is. Yeah, it's gonna make your acquisition. It's going to put a lot of pressure on the metrics of acquisition. Your calls are going to be more expensive. You're going to convert fewer callers. You can have more cancellations, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. But the third one is new patient acquisition, right, Ian?
Mm-hmm. So with the third one, as you mentioned, new patient acquisition, and this one, of course, it's important. I think this is the most raw number that a dentist
Mhm.
looks at when it
This
comes
is when
to
dentists think of ROI, they're thinking of this bucket almost exclusively.
exactly,
Yeah.
and it does have a place. And I mean, we have spoken about it at length that this is something we understand, we agree that when it comes to ROI on marketing, of course, new patient numbers is an important thing, but to give you less sleepless nights on whether or not your marketing is being allocated accurately, if the money you're spending is is being put to work properly, understand that that new patient number will ebb and flow depending on demand, seasonality, all of these things, and that's where you need to remember that that specific metric is also a portion of what you need to be focusing on when it comes to judging the success of the marketing and your overall marketing budget. Because without those first two pillars, the third one becomes something that's less relevant because it becomes more difficult, or it becomes something
Mhm.
that you can't really judge because these things are in place, or it's a slower season, so the new patient numbers are down, but these other two factors are seeing massive boom and we're growing in terms of your online presence. And then it's usually to wait until that third one follows with the rest of the pillars.
Very well said, Ian. Thank you so much for your time. And I know it's getting late on that side of the world, so we'll let you go have dinner, buddy. But thanks so much for your time, Ian. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, Eric. Always great.